Today I want to talk about Covenant of the Ashen Wolf by Peña. This is a novella with a sci-fi western theme. This is the first novella in a series of western sci-fis. It was sent to me in exchange for my fair and honest review by the author, and its published date is January 6th, 2024. How far would you go to see your family again? Embark on an epic quest beyond imagination into the unexplored splendors of Mithrandir. A mystical wonderland teeming with perilous creatures, arcane anomalies, and souls tainted by degeneracy awaits those daring enough to seek the ultimate prize. For those who find the heart of Mithrandir shall find what their heart truly desires. Or, at least, that's how the legend goes. Dive into the unknown alongside Sarah Sephiron as she assembles a fearless crew of bandits driven by a longing to reunite with the only father she has ever known. In a world where legend and reality intertwine, will Sarah triumph over the treacherous landscape of Mithrandir, unveiling its secrets and claiming her heart's truest desires? Or will she fall victim to the siren call of the inner realm? So let's talk about some of the things that I think were done really well in this book, and then we'll talk about some of the things that I think could have been done a little better. For one, I really like the setting. It's sort of a western sci-fi along the veins of Firefly, where you've got sort of hover bikes and six-shooters and a Dust Bowl Old West town sort of situation all in the same environment, and it actually worked really well. The author grounds you in this setting really early on. The first scene is basically the main character is rumbling down this dusty old road trying to get to the town. He's on a drug run for a group of local bandits that are sort of holding the town hostage. And he's driving down the road in a busted old truck, and he comes across this really high-tech vehicle on his way home. And he's not surprised or shocked by the existence of this hovering sphere. So that tells you right away, like, we have some high tech, we've got some Old West, we've got some pistols, we've got some like maybe 80s or 90s technology in there, and it's all sort of mashed in together, but in a way that works. This is probably where I should mention that this is an adult novel. It's a novella. It's the first in a series. The author conveyed to me that he wasn't sure how many there would be. But yeah, it's incredibly violent, but it's not particularly gory. The violence feels consequential. It feels impactful. And I really liked that even the good guys, even the heroes of the story, do exhibit these violent traits. It is a violent society, it's a violent world, and there's sort of a moral grayness even to the protagonists, even to the people that you're meant to root for, where they wind up having to do some really awful things in order to survive and in order to look after the people that they care for. And that sort of morally gray character really works for me, especially when there's a reason for that moral grayness and a reason for those bad actions that the good guys take. Another thing I really liked in this book was the magic system. An undisclosed percentage of the population has these things called sparks. So they had these talents or abilities that everybody else does not have access to. Stuff like the ability to control kinetic energy or manipulate temperature. And I thought that that was really neat. I thought that the way that they describe these abilities, making it really easy to be corrupted or really easy to fall into bad things or really easy to like use the fact that you have all this power over a normal human being, and how that can sort of tempt you towards becoming a bad person and doing bad things just because you can. And that was a sort of subtext. It was an underlayment, an underlying theme, and I really liked that. So I'd like to talk about some of the things that I think could have been done better. And I know that that's kind of difficult to do when we're talking about an indie book that's being self-published. A lot of folks will tell you that you can't judge indies by the same measure that you judge traditionally published books, that it's just not fair, and I don't feel that way. I feel like if I am buying a book with my money, and this book I got for free, it was given to me in exchange for this review, and I told them I was going to be honest. But as a consumer, if I'm paying for a book, I need to get what I'm paying for. And I don't particularly care the method that the author used to publish. I'm consuming a product, and the product needs to be of a certain quality. So I think it's reasonable to say out loud and openly and just be honest about the things that are not great in some of these indie books because it gives the author a chance to improve, or it gives other people a chance to decide, you know what, that's really going to bother me. I don't want to read that book. Or, you know what, that doesn't really matter to me much if the story's really cool, so I'm going to read it anyway. The first thing that bothered me in this book was the pacing. We were eased into the world in a pretty seamless way. The way that the main character and the second main, the main character of the overarching full novella set story were introduced, that worked really well. And then we got to about the halfway point and things just fell off a cliff. We were rushing towards the climax, but not in an intentional way. Pacing should increase. It should pick up as you're sort of moving towards the climax. But it needs to be intentional and it needs to be measured, and this was neither. I feel like this book would have been served really well by a really critical read-through by somebody who was not associated with the author. Somebody who didn't have an emotional attachment to them, maybe a critique partner, another author, maybe a paid developmental editor, somebody that could have honestly said, you know, it's got some pacing issues, here's where you're going too fast, here's where you're going too slow. And they weren't so dramatic that I couldn't enjoy the story, but it felt rushed. It felt like there was more that should have been and could have been said, and it just wasn't because we were in such a hurry to get to the end. I really like suspense novels. I like fast-paced novels. I like quick reads. But I feel like this needed more to it. It needed more development, and it just didn't have that. The second and probably main thing that did not work for me was the prose. Throughout the novel, particularly after the first couple chapters, the writing felt really unpolished, and I'm going to be as polite as I possibly can about this because I know how hard it is to sit down and write a book. This needed more editing. It wasn't the grammar, it wasn't the punctuation. The writing itself, the way that language was used, felt like it was written by a high schooler. Having written a few novels of my own and passed them off to friends and then gotten the feedback of, you know, the pacing and the prose and here's where it's clunky and here's where your dialogue's not working, this did not get enough editing before it was stamped as, okay, it's ready to publish and pushed out the door. Like I said, it's meant to come out January 6th. That's in about 5 days, and it's not ready. Prose, writing style, voice, those all mature and improve the more an author writes. What this feels like is a first attempt at writing a novel, and rather than set it aside, write the next one, set that aside, write the next one, and then come back and look at it with our now more developed, now more mature writing style. We finished it and had a few friends look over it, maybe a partner look over it, and then sent it out. And it wasn't ready. It just wasn't ready. The one thing that made this underdeveloped prose more bearable is the fact that it's a novella. You can chomp through this book in about 2 hours. And like I said before, the setting is really cool and the story's really cool. It's an introduction to a world that's interesting and engaging. And I am looking forward to reading the next installment, which tells me that although I wasn't particularly enamored with the writing style, I know that that's going to improve over time. So it's very likely I'm going to pick up the next one. I thought the setting and the world building were cool. I thought the magic system was really neat and really well thought out, the little bit that we got to see of it. And I really like the good people doing bad things because they have to themes that are going on in there. All of that really worked for me, which tells me that this writer has fantastic ideas and they just need to develop the writing a little more. That to me is worth coming back for. It's worth coming back for a second helping. It's worth sticking around to find out how they improve over time. So in all likelihood, I'm going to be picking up the next novella. So that was my experience with Covenant of the Ashen Wolf. It's imperfect, but it's a really cool idea, and I'm looking forward to see how it develops. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.